When I was 7 years old, I often woke up in the middle of the night, especially during the winter months. The weather was cold, the wind whistled through the door cracks, and the wooden house my family lived in often creaked at night. One night, I woke up again. I heard a sound and saw a faint light coming from the hallway. I got out of bed, quickly threw on a jacket, and slowly walked out. Downstairs in the living room, the light from the TV cast a dim glow on the snow-covered carpet near the window. I was about to go down to turn off the TV when I was drawn to what was on the screen. It was an animated show I had never seen before. The two main characters, a blonde girl and a wide-eyed boy, were climbing into a glowing sleigh piloted by a Santa Claus-shaped robot. Together, they flew over fantastical places, from snow-covered pine forests to gingerbread villages and cities bright with Christmas lights. The background music was gentle, shimmering like distant bells. I sat down and was completely captivated by the show. I only turned off the TV when the program ended and quietly crept back to bed. From then on, I started waking up at that exact time every night. It was almost instinctive, and every night the TV was already on. No one else in the house knew. I felt like I had a small privilege to sneak watch this show. It felt like my own secret Christmas gift. But then, one night the program didn't end as usual. The colorful scene gradually became somber. The night sky covered the screen, and the sleigh slowed down, stopping in the middle of a forest blanketed in white snow. The main characters, the boy and the girl, turned to look at each other, their faces anxious. They both wanted to go home, but the Santa robot suddenly let out a delighted laugh. "You kids aren't allowed to go home." The screen went black, and the program ended. I was dazed for a few seconds before turning off the TV. I went to the bathroom before returning to my bedroom. When I came back, the TV was on again, but it was nothing but static, with a shrill grating noise. A chill ran down my spine. I quickly turned it off and ran back to my room. The consecutive days of staying up late to watch TV left me feeling sluggish at school. I couldn't hear anything during class, only hoping for recess so I could slump onto my desk and sleep for a bit. One day, during recess at school, a girl I had never spoken to before pulled me aside. Her voice was unusually deep and serious. "The playground. You know that after 9 p.m. is the time of the dead? If you stay awake, they will find you." Before I could ask her anything, she turned and walked away, leaving me standing still in the middle of the schoolyard. That night, I woke up again. But it wasn't like the previous times. I felt like someone was pulling me awake. I walked out to the living room. The TV was on as always, but the familiar show was gone. There was only the chaotic static screen, the grating noise drilling into my ears. I walked over to turn it off, but as I turned my back, the static volume increased. The TV turned itself back on, and the image flickered rapidly. Then the main character boy from the show appeared. His eyes were no longer clear, nor his smile bright. He was inside an iron cage, his head bowed. Bang! He suddenly slammed forcefully against the inside of the screen. I screamed in surprise and backed away. He repeated the movement, each time more violently. Then he pressed his face close to the glass. "Let me out! Let me out! Do you hear me?" The screen showed static, then flashed back to show the boy's friend, the girl. She was also locked in an iron cage. The girl reached a hand toward me. "Hey, come here and let me go. Please." The very next second, her face stretched, becoming distorted. Her eyes were sunken and pitch black, and her mouth widened all the way to her ears. "You should be me! You should be in here instead of me!" I screamed, rushing up the stairs to the second floor. I ran to my parents' room and pounded on the door for help. But strangely, they slept soundly, not responding, even though I shook them until my arms were tired. Just as I was about to burst into tears, a laugh echoed from the living room. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. I recognized it as the Santa robot's laugh. "Your turn, little one. I'm coming to get you." I ran back to my room, quickly hiding under the covers, trembling violently. I suddenly realized I was still clutching the remote control in my hand. A thought flashed through my panic. They appeared from the TV show, so all I needed to do was turn off the TV. I jumped up, pointed the remote toward the door. The moment the horrifying robot pushed the door open, I pressed the power button. In an instant, everything vanished. There was only my own ragged breathing. I curled up under the covers, motionless, until I was utterly exhausted and drifted off to sleep. The next morning, I told my parents everything. They just looked at each other and laughed. "You were sleepwalking last night. You were sitting in the living room giggling all by yourself." I didn't know what to say. If it was a dream, it was the most real, most terrifying dream I had ever experienced.
Before we continue, I just want to say thank you. MHS crossed over 10,000 subscribers in 2025, and that's all because of you. Every single view, like, and share means the world to me. From the bottom of my heart, thank you. This year, we're setting our sights on 50,000 in 2026. So if you enjoy these videos and haven't subscribed yet, now's the perfect time. Hit that button, join the community. Let's grow this together. Now, back to the stories.
My name is Aliana. I'm 27 and I live in Chicago. Usually I don't believe in paranormal stuff or urban legends, but what happened last month, I honestly don't know how to explain it. I had to travel to Galena, Illinois for a 3-day business trip. Instead of booking a hotel, I rented a small house on Airbnb so I'd have a quiet place to work. Plus, I brought my dog Max along, and he needed a little space to run around. The house was vintage, with a classic old-school design, but everything seemed fine at first. The hardwood floors were polished, the furniture was neat, and the place smelled like scented candles. I had zero complaints. On the first day, I took Max for a walk around the house to get him settled. Max is usually high energy and curious about everything, but this time was different. When I tried to lead him up to the second floor, he stopped dead at the bottom of the stairs. I gave his leash a gentle tug and called his name, even offering him his favorite treat, but he wouldn't budge. Max just stood there, staring intensely at a spot on the stairs. The hair on his neck was standing up, his nose was twitching, and he let out a low growl like he was warning me about something. I left Max downstairs and went up to check things out. I lifted the rug, knocked on the banister, and looked around, but I didn't see anything out of the ordinary. Later that night, as I was walking around, I took a closer look at the house's layout. Right behind the stairs, there was a small door built into the wall. It was locked from the outside and looked like an entrance to a basement or a crawl space. What struck me as odd was that the light switch for that room was on the outside wall, and it was switched on. I knelt down and looked through the half-inch gap under the door. I could see a faint yellow light glowing from inside. I figured the owner just forgot to turn off the storage light, so I flipped it off and went to bed. But I couldn't stop thinking about how weird Max had been acting. The next morning, I decided to investigate a little more. I opened the camera on my phone, hit record, and slid it through the gap under the door to see what was inside. The video just showed a corner of a ceiling with dark wood. Nothing special. I tilted the phone back and forth, but the angle was too limited, so I pulled it back out. Right then, I heard a noise from behind the door. I jumped back, my eyes locked on the handle. It sounded like someone was turning the doorknob from the inside. They twisted it a few times, and then stopped completely. I immediately called the host. "I'm sorry to bother you, but is there anyone else in the house?" Or is there another way into that storage room behind the stairs? That's just a storage area leading to the basement, she said. There's no other entrance, and I'm the only one with a key. Why do you ask? I told her what I'd heard. She insisted it was probably just the wind or old pipes. Sometimes the heating system makes weird noises. It's an old house, please don't worry about it. I thanked her and hung up, but I still felt uneasy. I called my best friend and told her the story. She suggested I try recording the inside one more time. I did exactly what I did before. I turned on the camera and slid the phone under the door. This time, I lightly knocked on the door 3 times to see if I'd get a reaction. Right after the 3rd knock, something with incredible force snatched the phone right out of my hand. It was pulled into the darkness so fast I didn't even have time to react. I screamed, and Max started barking like crazy. Once I stopped shaking, I used my work phone to call the host back. I frantically explained what happened. You need to come over here right now. My phone was pulled inside and I need to get it back. The host arrived about 20 minutes later. She unlocked the door, turned on a brighter light, and we walked in together. It was just a small room with steep wooden stairs leading down to a basement. The ceiling was low, the walls were bare brick, and it smelled damp and musty. My phone was lying face down on the 3rd step. I picked it up, and luckily, it wasn't broken. The screen was still on, and everything seemed to be working fine. I looked around one more time. There were just a few old cardboard boxes in the corner, and an old furnace. There were no secret exits, and no windows. It would have been impossible for someone to be hiding down there. The host promised me again that there was nothing to worry about. We went back upstairs. I thanked her and she left. But I still felt sick to my stomach. I took my phone to my room, my heart still pounding. I opened the video I had just recorded. My heart practically stopped. The beginning of the video showed the blurry motion of the phone being jerked away. Then, it lay still on the steps for a moment. But then, the camera slowly began to rotate. It was slow and deliberate. It pointed straight up at the ceiling. Next, the phone stood up on its own. It looked as if an invisible hand was lifting it, holding the camera steady toward the door for several seconds. Finally, as if it had been hit by a heavy punch, the phone flipped backward and landed face down. The screen went black. I sat there frozen. My whole body went cold. I couldn't wrap my head around what I was seeing. In the video, the phone ended up with the camera facing down. That means when I picked it up, it should have been lying face up. But when I found it, it was face down again. Something had flipped it over after the recording ended. I didn't feel safe in that house for another second. Not knowing what was there was scarier than facing an actual intruder. Even though it was dark, I packed my bags, checked out early, and found a hotel. After I finished my trip and got back to Chicago, I shared the story and the video online. The post blew up. Some people believed it was a ghost or a spirit. Others thought there must be a hidden crawl space I missed. Some people accused me of faking the whole thing for views. I can't prove anything, and I don't have a logical explanation. But I know what I experienced. Max felt something that human eyes couldn't see, and my phone caught a glimpse of something that shouldn't be possible. Now, whenever I book an Airbnb, I do a deep dive into the reviews and the history of the place. And most importantly, I watch Max. I will never stay in a place with a locked door that leads to nowhere again. Inspired by a true story, in late 2023, Sydney, TikTok nickname Sid.Lane 2001, posted a video of herself and her sister staying at an Airbnb rental. There, her dog behaved strangely, refusing to go up the stairs and staring intently at a single spot. Sydney discovered a locked door behind the stairs, with light leaking through the gap. When she reached in with her phone, the device was pulled inside, recording unusual movements before being slammed shut. The landlord then opened the door and retrieved the phone. The incident went viral, sparking debate over paranormal theories, hidden spaces, and staging. Living with someone you aren't close with is always a gamble. My name is Chester, and I'm 29. I shared a rental house in the suburbs with a roommate named Parker. We weren't really friends, we just paid rent together. Parker was a strange guy. He spent most of his time online, specifically in the dark corners of the internet that normal people never visit. It all started late one night. Parker was excited to show me a new dating site he found on the deep web. He called it a place for perfect soulmates, based on very specific interests. When he turned his laptop screen toward me, I felt a cold chill run down my spine. The profiles on that site didn't use real names, only bizarre nicknames. Parker showed me a profile for someone named Petunia. When I read her bio, it made me feel sick. It said, "I need to be let inside. I can't stop scratching until the pain stops. The pain keeps the bad thoughts away." Her listed hobby? Listening to people chew. I told Parker that this was insane. I told him the photos didn't even look like a real person. But Parker just laughed, and his eyes looked wild with excitement. He muttered that Petunia was the most perfect girl in the world. That night, I discovered something terrible. Parker had used my photos to create a profile and flirt with Petunia. He claimed it was okay because I looked trustworthy and my photos were public anyway. I was furious and demanded he delete them immediately. He agreed, but the smirk on his face told me it was already too late. A few nights later, someone knocked on our door. It was well past midnight. I went to open it and froze. Standing there was a girl, if you could even call her that. She wore an old-fashioned dress and stood in an unnatural, crooked way. The dim porch light hit her pale, dry skin. I felt a powerful, uncanny valley sensation. She looked human, but every detail was wrong, from her slow, mechanical blinking to her stiff smile. "I'm here to see Chester," she said. Her voice was raspy, like sandpaper rubbing together. I went cold. "I'm Chester, but I don't know you." Right then, Parker rushed out of his room. He looked at her with pure lust and admitted he was the one messaging her. He eagerly invited her inside. As she walked in, her legs moved like her bones didn't fit together quite right. She whispered that she was very tired and wanted to be alone with Parker. Watching Parker lead her upstairs made me feel a deep sense of dread. I hated that my identity was being used for something so creepy. Once they were behind his bedroom door, I noticed her purse hanging on the coat rack. A bad feeling told me to check it. I reached inside and started looking through her things. At the bottom of the bag, I found a stack of IDs. There were at least 5 of them. They all had photos of different women with different names, but they all had one thing in common. They all looked slightly off, just like she did. I shivered and texted Parker. "There are a bunch of fake IDs in her bag. Something is wrong, get her out of here." He replied instantly and sounded very angry. "You're being stupid. Calm down and stop being rude to my girlfriend." I decided to go upstairs to have a serious talk with him. As I passed the shared bathroom in the hallway, I heard a strange noise. It was a cracking sound, like eggshells being crushed. It was followed by the sound of frantic, wet scratching. The bathroom door was slightly open. Through the crack and the reflection in the mirror, I saw Petunia. She wasn't the girl from before anymore. She was scratching her neck, and big pieces of dry skin were peeling off like onion layers. Underneath the skin wasn't red meat, but a gray, slimy material. Her jaw hung down way too far, opening all the way down to her chest. I pulled out my phone and started recording. Through the camera lens, the creature suddenly stopped. It didn't turn its head normally. Its neck twisted 180 degrees backward. Its eyes, pitch black with no pupils, looked right into the camera. It saw me. I dropped my phone, and my heart felt like it was going to explode. I ran back to my room, locked the door, and tried to catch my breath. I couldn't just sit there, so I gathered my courage and knocked on Parker's door. He opened it, and his face was red with rage. "Are you stalking her?" Parker yelled at me. "Parker, listen to me. She isn't human. I just saw her in the bathroom. She was peeling. She's a monster." Parker looked at me like I was a mental patient. He pointed to Petunia sitting on the bed. Now, she looked normal again. She looked at me with that stiff smile, gently scratching the back of her hand. "She's my girlfriend," Parker roared. "Accept her, or get out of this house right now. I'll call the cops if you keep filming her or stalking us." While Parker was screaming at me, I looked at Petunia behind him. She started to change again. Her shoulders hunched up high, and her ribs started poking through her thin dress. She opened her mouth and made a rhythmic clicking sound, just like the chewing interest in her profile. She looked at me with a mocking expression, as if to say, "He is mine, and you can't save him." Parker kept yelling ridiculous things about true love, completely blind to the monster that was slowly surrounding him from behind. I didn't wait until morning. I knew that if I stayed, her hobby of peeling skin or listening to chewing sounds would be used on me next. I grabbed my essentials, took my car keys, and ran out of the house while Parker was still screaming threats at me. I don't know what happened to Parker after that night, but I want to warn everyone, never touch the dark corners of the internet. Sometimes the thing you invite home is not a human being. I am still haunted by every detail of that night, a cold, windy evening 10 years ago. At that time, we were just mischievous 12-year-olds. Me, Sam, Lisa, and Matt. Before that, we had one more member, Max. Speaking of Max, he was once my close neighbor, but disappeared one rainy day without a trace. The police searched everywhere, but the case went cold. A year had passed since Max's disappearance, and Sam was the one who sparked the idea of exploring the mysterious house of Mrs. Martha, the woman who lived alone at the end of the street. People said she had lived there for many years and knew how to use incantations. Those rumors became the inspiration for us to prove that it was all nonsense. But there was more to it than just curiosity. I remember Max once told me that Mrs. Martha had stared at him for a long time from the window when he passed by her house. Since then, I couldn't stop thinking, could she be connected to Max's disappearance? I immediately agreed when I heard the suggestion from Sam, Lisa, and Matt, though I reluctantly followed. That night, Mrs. Martha's house loomed like a ghost in the dark. The wooden walls were rotting, the windows covered with dark fabric, and an eerie silence hung in the air, causing us to hesitate. Sam quietly opened a basement window at the side of the house, and the group crept inside. Inside, it was pitch black, and the air was heavy as if no one had lived there for many years. The air was thick, and every step echoed eerily. Black and white photos hung on the walls, but they were all faded and hard to make out. On a shelf, I saw strange jars filled with dark liquid, each etched with the name of a child. My hand trembled as I touched the jar with Max written on it. In a small room at the end of the second-floor hallway, I found something that shattered all my doubts. A wooden toy ship, the gift I had given Max for his 5th birthday. Around it were other toys I recognized as children's belongings. My heart tightened, and a flood of questions overwhelmed me. Lisa entered, her eyes wide with panic. "We should go," she whispered. "No," Sam said. "We need to find more." She's definitely hiding more terrifying things. Suddenly, a raspy laugh echoed from behind. "Get out of here," she said, her voice seeming to come from somewhere far away, although she was standing right in front of us. We panicked. Sam shouted, "Run!" and the whole group rushed out of the room. Behind us, Mrs. Martha's slow footsteps drew nearer and nearer. Sam grabbed the door handle and yanked it, but it was useless, and he screamed in despair. "She's coming!" Lisa screamed, her eyes locked on the dark figure moving closer. In the chaos, Sam turned and ran straight for the window, yelling loudly and jumping out. I ran to him, only hearing the sound of glass shattering. When I looked down, I saw Sam's lifeless body on the ground, blood spilling around him. "The secret is not for the curious," Mrs. Martha's voice echoed again. The sound of footsteps pounding through the dark hallway made my panic worsen. I had no choice but to run, not caring about direction, and then thud. I stepped on a loose floorboard, and beneath it was a dark, narrow space, just wide enough for someone to crawl through. "Here! There's a way out!" I shouted, my voice hoarse with fear. The group immediately rushed to me. Matt and I struggled to lift the floorboard, but it was stuck as if something underneath was holding it in place. Matt quickly searched for something to pry it loose. Matt fumbled around in the dark room and found an old oil lamp on a shelf. With a bit of light, we quickly took turns pushing and prying. As we struggled with the board, we heard footsteps coming from the stairs. That voice wasn't loud, but it reverberated throughout the house, as if coming from every corner. The raspy voice was like a curse. "Don't think you can escape. The darkness will keep you forever." My head spun. Lisa began to sob uncontrollably, clutching my hand, while Matt froze, his hands trembling around the oil lamp. I used all my strength to kick at the board. Finally, the board popped up, revealing a narrow, dark tunnel below. A gust of cold air rushed up from the hole, carrying the smell of damp earth and decay. I pushed Lisa through first. She trembled, shaking her head, but there was no time for hesitation. Matt shoved Lisa down right after, and then I followed. Just then, I heard Mrs. Martha's footsteps coming toward us. Her steps were slow, but they sent a chill down my spine. I turned one last time. Mrs. Martha was getting closer, but she wasn't walking. She seemed to glide across the floor, without a sound. Her eyes fixed on me, and her mouth twisted into a grotesque smile. I didn't hesitate for a second, diving into the passage and pulling the board back into place. Darkness engulfed everything. There was no light, no sound except for our heavy breathing. The passage was narrow and low, forcing us to crouch down to move. Mrs. Martha's footsteps above us still echoed, though faint. It was like the slow, heavy beat of a heart, slow but relentless. I dared not look back, only pushing myself to move faster. We kept going, and then, after what felt like an eternity, a faint light appeared ahead. I felt as though I hadn't breathed in hours. When we crawled out of the tunnel, we found ourselves behind the house near some thick bushes. The sky outside was still dark, but the moonlight faintly illuminated the path ahead. In that moment, running into the darkness was the only safe and viable option. The people who would surely come next were our parents and the police. The police concluded that Sam died from multiple injuries. The sight of Sam lying motionless on the ground haunted me so much that every breath felt stuck in my chest. Lisa collapsed, clutching her head, her sobs blending with broken, fragmented words. Matt stood frozen, his vacant stare locked on the bloodstain below the window, his hands trembling as if trying to hold on to something invisible, to keep from falling apart. After several months of continuous investigation, the police finally uncovered the truth when they found Mrs. Martha hiding in an abandoned house several dozen miles from the town. They discovered horrifying evidence linking her to several child disappearances, including toys, clothes, and detailed journals documenting her targets. Mrs. Martha confessed that she carried out these acts due to a warped belief in an ancient ritual, sacrificing children to extend her life. According to her, the The dark jars with each child's name weren't just symbols, they were part of a ritual to lock the children's souls into eternal darkness. Although the police dismissed the supernatural elements of her confession, they couldn't explain certain strange occurrences, like the disappearance of the jars or items mysteriously showing up in the homes of the victims. Mrs. Martha was sentenced to life in prison, but her story continued to haunt the town for many years. I, Lisa, and Matt, the lucky ones who survived, carried with us psychological scars that were hard to heal. I still can't forget her deep, haunting gaze that night. I'm Claire, a 22-year-old senior at Kent State. Back in my second semester of freshman year, I babysat in the evenings to make some extra cash. That ended up being both my first and last part-time job, because it was straight up traumatic. This happened 3 winters ago. The Smith's house sits in a quiet neighborhood out in the Ohio suburbs. The roof was covered in snow, and the warm yellow glow from the windows made it look super cozy. Inside, their 2-story house felt homey. The furniture was all neatly arranged, family photos lined the walls, and the wooden floors had this nice shine to them. I was looking after Max, their 3-year-old son, who was happily playing with his favorite teddy bear, his little eyes full of curiosity. I spent the evening taking care of him, feeding him, telling him stories, and putting him to bed. Max's room was small but cozy, the nightlight taking the edge off the cold outside. As he drifted off, clutching his teddy bear, I checked the baby monitor to make sure I had a clear view, then headed back to the living room. Curled up on the sofa with a book, I enjoyed the peaceful moment of a winter night. Around 1 a.m., I was startled by a rustling sound coming from the monitor. The noise was small but clear, like the sound of clothes rubbing together or someone moving in Max's room. As I stared at the screen, a chill ran down my spine. Max wasn't in his crib anymore. The boy stood in the middle of the room, his small frame motionless. His eyes were empty, devoid of emotion, staring directly at the camera as if he were watching me through the screen. My heart pounded. Max was only 3 years old. How could he climb out of the crib that high? I told myself it could be a device malfunction, but the image was too real to be just a technical issue. Grabbing the baby monitor, I headed upstairs. The wooden floor creaked under me, and with every step, the air felt colder. When I pushed open Max's door, I just stood there, stunned. He was still sound asleep in his crib. I glanced back at the monitor. Max's creepy, motionless figure was gone. Now, it just showed him peacefully sleeping. I scanned the room, everything looking normal, except for one small thing. His teddy bear, the one he'd been holding, was now on the floor a few steps from the crib. I picked it up, placed it back in Max's hand, and tried to shake off the unease. Maybe the boy dropped the teddy bear while sleeping. But why was it so far away? Back in the living room, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching me. The cold sank into my skin, making my heart race. That eerie image of Max standing frozen in the middle of the room wouldn't leave my mind. About half an hour later, as I tried to relax, a loud noise came from upstairs. A child's giggles, mixed with light but hurried footsteps, as if Max were running around the room. I quickly walked up the stairs and opened Max's door. He was still lying there, fast asleep. But the window was wide open, and the cold wind blew in, making the curtains flutter. In a panic, I looked back at the monitor. The light from the camera flickered, and then suddenly, a blurry figure crossed the frame. It was taller than a child, moving so fast that I couldn't see it clearly. The next morning, I told Mrs. Smith, Max's mother, everything. She listened but seemed uneasy, her eyes awkward, and her forced smile made me feel like she wasn't too surprised. She said that Max had talked about a friend who played with him at night. This friend didn't like strangers, especially me. A chill ran through me, but Miss Smith just gave an awkward smile and said kids have wild imaginations. Then she mentioned hearing footsteps at night or finding windows open for no reason. Mrs. Smith revealed a detail that made my skin crawl. The house was built on the grounds of an old mental asylum that was demolished in the 1970s. The locals whispered that the land had issues, but the Smith family didn't believe in ghost stories. They stayed because they had never encountered anything truly dangerous, at least not until now. After that night, I decided to quit. Nothing dangerous happened, but that creepy feeling never left me, and I just couldn't do the job anymore. The Smith family decided to move a few months later. One day, when I happened to run into them in town, Mrs. Smith said that Max still talked about his friend. He said the friend was sad he left. Sometimes, Max even said he saw the friend standing outside the window, watching him. I still don't know what really happened that night, but every time I think back, I can't shake the feeling that someone's still watching me from the shadows. The cold, Max's empty eyes, and the blurry figure on the baby monitor, they still haunt me to this day. I quit my security guard job 3 years ago, but the memory of that night still haunts me. Every time I see a no signal on a screen, my heart starts pounding. In 2019, I was working the night shift as a security guard at Walmart. After 2 years on the job, I knew every nook and cranny of that place. That night, I was sitting in the security room, drinking coffee and watching NBA on my phone. The clock had just struck 2 a.m. when a loud crash echoed from somewhere in the building. It sounded like someone had knocked over a whole shelf. I immediately switched to the CCTV screens. Images from many CCTV displayed on 6 screens, covering everything from the main entrance to the hallways, from the central lobby to each individual department. I checked each angle, zooming in on areas where something might have happened. Nothing. Everything was silent. I grabbed my flashlight and keys and started patrolling from the ground floor. I meticulously checked each department. After about an hour of patrolling, finding nothing unusual, I returned to the security room. Maybe it was just a stray cat knocking over a trash can outside. I sat down, intending to go back to my phone, when I suddenly noticed something strange on CCTV number 8, which covered the best electronics department on the 2nd floor. A faint, bluish light, like the glow from a TV screen. I zoomed in on that CCTV. Yes, there was definitely something glowing inside the store, but how could that be? I had just checked that store, and everything was off. I quickly grabbed my flashlight and keys to head back to the 2nd floor. The 2nd floor hallway was darker than the ground floor, with only a few emergency lights illuminating it. As I approached Best Electronics, I clearly saw the blue light from inside. I unlocked the door and stepped in. The scene inside stunned me. In the middle of the store, in front of a flat-screen TV, stood 2 people, an elderly man and an elderly woman. They stood close together, staring intently at the screen. "Excuse me, what are you 2 doing here?" I said loudly. The woman turned to look at me. Her face was wrinkled, and she offered a gentle smile with calm eyes. "This is the only program that makes him happy." I looked over at the man. He was still staring straight at the screen, unmoving. My hand unconsciously tightened its grip on the flashlight. "How did you get in here?" "We closed at 11 p.m. "We just need to watch a little longer. He really likes this show," the woman said. A chill ran down my spine from the way she spoke. The man hadn't moved or said a word since I entered. I started to wonder if he was even alive. That thought made me want to run immediately. "I have to report this. You 2 need to come out with me." My voice was stiff, trying to hide the rising panic. "Just 5 more minutes. Please. I'll call the police if you don't cooperate." I pulled out my walkie-talkie, my hand trembling as I pressed the button to call the night supervisor. While calling, I didn't dare take my eyes off the 2 people. "Jake, I've got 2 intruders in Best Electronics on the 2nd floor. Need backup and call the police." "Roger, keep them there. I'm calling the police now." When I hung up and turned back, the 2 people were gone. I stood frozen. I had only looked down at the walkie-talkie for a second to hang up. How could they disappear so quickly? I shined my flashlight around the entire store, my hands shaking uncontrollably. My breathing became rapid, as if there wasn't enough oxygen in my lungs. I shined my flashlight all over the store. No one. I checked the storage room in the back, the employee restroom, all empty. The TV was still on, displaying a blue screen. The police arrived. They searched the entire building, but found no one. There were no signs of forced entry at any of the entrances. All the doors were still locked, and the alarm system was functioning normally. "Are you sure you saw them?" the police officer asked me with skepticism. I understood immediately. He thought I was hallucinating. "Absolutely sure. They were standing right in front of that TV." They asked to review the CCTV footage. We sat in the security room, replaying the recording from 3 a.m. On the screen, I saw myself opening the door to Best Electronics and stepping inside. I stood in the store, shining my flashlight everywhere. And I was talking to thin air. I froze, feeling like I was going crazy. In the CCTV footage, the store was completely empty. It was just me standing alone, talking to the darkness. But I swear with a God that I saw those two people. I still vividly remember that woman's voice and her eyes. The police examined the CCTV footage until morning. On the screen, the TV was indeed on, emitting a blue light. But no one else was visible besides me. I worked for 3 more months, then quit. Not because I was afraid, but because I couldn't focus anymore. Every night on patrol, I would stop by Best Electronics. The TV was always off, the store always empty. But sometimes I still felt like someone was watching me from inside. 6 months later, I read that Best Electronics had closed down. The reason: low revenue and unexplained technical incidents. They said the electronic devices in the department would often turn on by themselves at night, especially the large flat-screen TV. That department is now a bakery, but I never dare go in. Some nights when I drive by, I still see the dim light from inside. It's as if the old couple is still standing there, watching their favorite show on a non-existent screen.
I'm Steven. I live in Houston. Just signed the papers to pay for a car with my tiny office salary. Not trying to brag or anything, but it's a horror story that made me swear off public transportation for good. That night, on the last bus from work to my place, I grabbed the seat in the back row. It was just me, some girl, and the driver on the bus at that point. I leaned back, shut my eyes, and just tried to relax. It took me almost an hour to get home. The girl, annoyed, told the driver, "You can skip the empty stops, it'll save time. I gotta be home in 15 minutes. I noticed she looked like she was still in school. With all that heavy makeup and colorful clothes, she probably just came from a party." The driver replied slowly, "Chill, girl, I'm just following the rules. But your rules ain't gonna help me dodge my parents finding out." The driver laughed and was like, "This last bus ain't just for people. It's got other stuff too." That caught me off guard a bit. The girl rolled her eyes, plopped back in her seat, and started scrolling on her phone. I closed my eyes, leaned back, and tried to rest. I was exhausted, but I just couldn't fall asleep. A while later, when the bus stopped, a cold wind hit, and it made me shiver. I looked around and realized I was the only one on the bus. No one got on the bus at this stop. I zipped up my jacket, shoved my hands in my pockets, and curled up. "Why is it so cold?" I mumbled. I checked the clock and it was already past 11, just about 30 minutes till I got home. I pulled out the book I was reading to kill some time. I turned the page, then looked up by accident and saw a girl sitting near the door in a red sweater with long, messy brown hair. Clearly, that girl wasn't there a minute ago. I looked out at the street and there was no bus stop around here. When did she even get on? No way. This can't be the high school girl who just ran away from home. Whatever. I went back to reading. The second time I looked up, it kind of seemed like the girl was sitting closer to me, but I wasn't sure.
She was sitting up straight and didn't seem to budge. I kept reading, but I couldn't focus. The air in the bus was getting colder, and I started shivering. After a few minutes of trying to focus, I looked up at the girl in the red shirt again. She was sitting way closer to me, like just 2 rows away. My heart started racing, and I felt this weird shortness of breath. I tried to shake off the bad thoughts by keeping on reading, gripping the book tight. The light on the page faded, and a dark shadow took over. That girl, she was right in front of me, but she moved without making a sound. I started gasping and slowly looked up. She was still sitting up straight, but the sweater wasn't red. It was soaked in some red stuff that smelled fishy. Before I could even react, the girl gently pushed her hair back with both hands. She pushed her hair back, and behind it, a messed up face stared at me, and she started giggling. I just mumbled some sounds, took a few more seconds, then finally screamed, letting all the horror out. When I ran out of breath, I took another one and screamed again. I kept doing that until something hard smacked my head. "What's wrong with you?" I opened my eyes, and it was that girl from earlier, holding a school bag. She was staring at me like she was judging me. I was freaking out, looking all around the bus like, "The girl in red, the girl with long hair." I kept saying it, about to lose it. I bolted off the bus, stood at the stop, and gasped for air. The bus took off, and in my seat, I saw the back of a girl in red, sitting up straight. I couldn't take anymore and just collapsed, trying to figure out where I was. It was a stop close to my place, so I jumped up and ran home, my hands shaking as I tried to open the door. I never went near that bus stop again, and I never told anyone about that creepy experience. No one would believe this, but I'm sure the stuff I felt was real as heck. I am Wade, 29 years old. I just quit my job at my old company because I didn't see myself growing there, and I wanted something more. After taking some time off and looking for a new gig, I was happy to pick between 2 companies in Florida. I love this state because I get to travel around here and visit family. The weather in Florida always makes me feel comfy and good vibes. The 2 companies I interviewed with were pretty good, and I was really excited about the chance to live and work in Florida. My finances weren't great at the time, so I decided to drive to Florida on my own for the interview. Time was tight, so I drove through the night to get to Florida in the morning and hit the interview that afternoon. I threw on a podcast story and swapped out the car's air freshener. Kicking things off with a positive vibe made me feel chill, not scared of the dark or the empty highway. All I could see on the road was my car's headlights cutting through the mist and the trees swaying in the shadows. A few hours later, I saw a guy on the side of the road, driving the same way I was. He was dressed in all black, just standing there next to his car that was turned off. The light was pretty low, so I couldn't make out his face. As I got closer, I felt like he was staring at me. In that moment, I thought about stopping to see if he was okay. But then, my actions didn't match my thoughts, and I just hit the gas and drove straight ahead. About 10 minutes later, I saw another guy standing there by himself. This guy didn't have any other cars around him. I thought something had happened to him, so I decided to pull over. When the car stopped and I turned to look, he was gone. My heart skipped a beat, and I looked around, trying to figure out where he went. There was a little trail nearby, heading into the dark woods. Could he have run into it? But why so fast? I started getting more suspicious about the guy in the black suit, feeling freaked out, so I just took off. I tried to calm myself down, but the image of the guy in the black suit kept popping into my head. I decided to stop at a Denny's for a break, thinking some food and a rest would make me feel better. I was enjoying my sandwich when my eyes drifted to the window, and suddenly, I got chills all over. The guy in the black suit was standing outside staring right at me. He just stood there, silent and still, with those dark, empty eyes staring through the glass. I felt my blood run cold, and my breathing got heavy. I couldn't sit there any longer, so I grabbed my coffee, rushed out of the shop, and hustled to my car. I slammed the door shut, my hands shaking as I shoved the key in the ignition and hit the gas, speeding out of the parking lot. I drove for a few more hours and didn't see any more guys. Slowly, I started to feel a lot better. Maybe it was just a coincidence, and I was overthinking it. But when I accidentally glanced at the rearview mirror, I almost stopped breathing. The guy in the black suit was sitting in the back seat of my car. My heart was pounding. I screamed in panic and hit the gas. The car shot forward. I almost lost control, fumbling and freaking out trying to find the brake. I jumped out of the car, yanked open the back door, but there was no one there. The guy was gone, like he'd never been there. I looked around, scanning the quiet night, but all I could hear was the wind whistling through the trees. I felt like I was losing it, not able to make sense of what was going on. Scared and freaked out, I decided to drive to a nearby motel to crash for the night. I needed to calm down, just a safe place to think it all through. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every little sound freaked me out. I just wanted morning to come fast so I could get out of there. The next morning, I left the motel super early, drove straight to the city, and stayed away from all the empty roads. When I got to my first interview, I still felt pretty anxious. I walked into the room, and my heart nearly stopped when I saw the recruiter. He, the guy sitting in front of me, had the exact same face as the guy in the black suit I'd seen on the street. I was frozen, barely able to believe what I was seeing. Fear hit me hard, and I couldn't focus on the interview. My mind went blank, and my words came out all messed up. I totally bombed that interview. But more than anything, I felt like I was losing it. I was totally confused, not getting what was happening to me. I tried to chill out before the second interview. This time, there was no weird guy like that, so I was able to do better. Now I'm all about working on myself and my career, living the life I wanted in Florida. Little by little, I convinced myself it was all just a coincidence. Maybe I was just so stressed and anxious about the interview that I fixated on the guy in the black suit. A few days ago, I read an article about the company I bombed the interview for going bankrupt, where the recruiter had a face just like that mysterious guy I saw on the highway. The company had been dodging taxes for years and finally got busted going bankrupt. The recruiter, Mark, was arrested for harassing women, and according to the police, it wasn't his first offense. But at night, when I'm sitting alone, I still can't help but wonder, was it really all in my head? Or was there some kind of miracle that helped me dodge the danger? I'm Egan, 26 years old, and what happened that night by the lake near Blue Mountain changed me forever. Samson, my friend from college, suggested going camping near Blue Mountain National Park. He said it was the perfect place to reset our minds. Jordan, our best friend, also agreed to join. All three of us needed some time away from daily life, deadlines, and stressful relationships. I hadn't been camping since I was little, but wasn't too worried because Samson was experienced. He had picked a perfect spot, a small clearing next to a quiet lake, a few miles from the main campsites. When we arrived, sunset was gradually falling, dyeing the whole forest in an ethereal orange hue. "Hey, are you sure we're allowed to camp here?" I asked as we started setting up the tents. Samson chuckled lightly. "There aren't any no camping signs, right? Besides, this is public land just outside the park boundary." Jordan nodded in agreement. "I like this quietness. No tourists or noise, just us and nature." A fleeting sense of unease passed through me as I looked down at the still surface of the lake, but I quickly pushed the thought away. We finished setting up the two tents, one for Samson and Jordan, one for me. I always liked having my own space, even on trips like this. Afterwards, we started a campfire, opened beers, and began grilling meat. The atmosphere was really pleasant. For the first time in months, I felt the stress slowly melting away. Jordan connected his phone to a Bluetooth speaker and turned on some music. The gentle acoustic music blended with the sound of the wind through the leaves and the soft lapping of water against the shore. We sat around the fire, sharing old stories, reminiscing about college, and laughing about silly memories. In that moment, everything was perfect. Until Samson suddenly stopped mid-story and turned off the music. "Hey, what are you doing?" Jordan asked, slightly annoyed. Samson didn't answer. He stared intently towards the lake, his body tense. I followed his gaze, but saw nothing but thick darkness and the moonlight reflecting on the water. "Sam?" I asked softly. "Do you guys hear that?" He whispered, his eyes still fixed on the lake. I listened. At first, nothing but the crackling fire and the sound of insects. But then there was a sound, very faint, as if the water was being gently disturbed. "Something's in the water," Samson said, his voice tense. Jordan chuckled. "Probably just fish, Sam." But Samson shook his head. "No, much bigger. Sounds like someone walking in the water." A chill ran down my spine. "Let me see," I said, taking the flashlight out of my bag and shining it towards the lake. My flashlight beam swept across the water's surface, but I saw nothing unusual. The lake remained still, only a few small ripples created by the wind. But then, as I moved the beam further out, I thought I saw a larger ripple, as if something had just submerged. "See anything?" Samson asked, his voice strained. I didn't want to freak everyone out, so I shook my head. "No, nothing." But then we heard it again. The sound of displaced water, as if someone or something was moving underwater, and it was heading towards us. "We should get in the tents," Jordan suggested, his joking expression gone. Samson nodded. We extinguished the campfire and packed up our things. No one said anything, but I could feel the tension. Inside the tent, I tried to sleep, but couldn't. I couldn't stop thinking about what we had just witnessed. About an hour later, as I finally started drifting off, I heard a new sound. Footsteps. At first, it was distant, but grew louder, closer, heavy, and slow. Not the sound of an animal. These were human footsteps, but the footsteps were squishy, as if the person had just emerged from the water. I lay there, motionless, heart pounding in my chest. The footsteps drew closer to my tent. In a panic, I took out my phone and texted Samson. "Do you hear that?" I typed, my hands shaking so badly it was hard to type correctly. I waited, but no reply. The footsteps continued. "Sam, something's getting close to my tent." I texted again, feeling cold sweat run down my back. Still no reply. The footsteps stopped, right outside my tent. I held my breath. My heart was beating so hard I was sure whatever was out there could hear it. Then I heard breathing. I texted Samson again. "It's right outside my Before I could finish sending the message, it happened. A terrifying scream pierced the night. It lasted about 5 seconds, then fell silent. I lay there, frozen with fear. A silence even scarier than the scream. My phone vibrated. A message from Samson. "Get to the car now." Without thinking, I crawled out of my sleeping bag and unzipped the tent. I quickly scrambled out of the tent and ran straight towards the car parked about 200 yards away, not daring to look back. Finally, I reached the car. Samson and Jordan were already inside, their faces pale with fear. "Hurry up!" Samson yelled as I dove into the back seat. He started the car and sped off, tires kicking up mud as we left the campsite. "What happened?" I asked, still breathing heavily. Samson and Jordan looked at each other, fear evident in their eyes. "I don't know. We heard noises outside the tent. Then that scream," Jordan gasped out. "Did you see anything?" Samson asked, looking at me in the rearview mirror. I shook my head. It was right outside my tent, but I didn't see it. We drove to a nearby gas station and decided to sleep in the car overnight. The next morning, after an almost sleepless night, we decided to go back for our gear. In the daylight, the fear lessened slightly. When we got there, everything was still intact. Both tents were still standing, no signs of disturbance, Our stuff was still there. Maybe we just panicked, Jordan said, trying a weak laugh. But Samson wasn't laughing. He was looking towards the lake, his expression serious. Do you guys see that? He asked, pointing down at the lake shore. I followed his finger and felt my blood run cold. Footprints leading from the lake onto the shore, large footprints leading straight to our campsite, meandering between the tents, then returning to the lake. We quickly gathered our belongings and left, not daring to look back. On the way home, no one spoke. Each of us lost in our own thoughts, trying to understand what had happened. But there was no logical explanation. When I got home, I researched the Blue Mountain area and the lake. There wasn't much information, but I found an old newspaper article from 1978 about a couple who went missing in that area. They had gone camping and never returned. Their car was found next to the lake, but there were no suspicious signs. The police concluded they might have drowned, but the bodies were never found, and that wasn't the only case. Over the years, several people had gone missing in that area. A week after the trip, Samson called me. He had researched the lake further and discovered it wasn't marked on most maps. It had no official name, but locals called it Dead Man's Pond. According to local legend, the lake was much deeper than it looked, and the thing living at the bottom sometimes came ashore at night. I've never gone back to Blue Mountain, nor have I gone camping again. I don't know what we encountered that night, but it hurt us, and I always wonder if it's looking for us. But there's one more thing I've never told Samson or Jordan. That night, before we finally left the campsite, I looked back towards the lake, and in the dim moonlight, I thought I saw a figure standing by the water's edge, watching us. It had a human shape, but it wasn't human. It was taller, thinner, with long, slender limbs. That was the last thing I saw before we sped away. And that's the image that haunts me every night when I close my eyes. My name's Alex. Josh and Tyler, they've been best buds since college. The three of us are pretty outdoorsy. We love getting out in nature. Every now and then, we ditch the city for quick 2-day camping trips out in the woods. Last time, we headed out on a Saturday morning in July, each with a backpack loaded with gear. The plan: hit 2 different campsites, one night at each. The first spot was about 2 miles off the main trail, tucked near a little stream. We made it there around 3 p.m. I dropped my pack and took a look around. Josh was already pulling his tent out, and Tyler was off gathering dry wood for the fire. "This place is perfect," Josh said while setting up. I nodded and started unpacking my stuff. The sun was already dipping low, and Tyler was stacking up kindling for a small fire. We kicked back, grilled some sausages, cracked open a few beers, and just let the stress from the week fade away. Then, around 8, something rustled in the bushes behind us. We all turned. Some guy stepped out. Gray, messy hair, unshaven beard. Looked like he hadn't seen a shower in a while. "Hey guys," he said. "Saw your fire and thought I'd come over." Josh glanced at me, then at Tyler. None of us said anything, but yeah, the vibe got weird fast. I asked, "Hey, you camping out here too?" The guy gave us this weird little smile. "You could say that. I've been out here a long time." He just stood there, eyes locked on the fire. That's when I noticed. His hands were shaking. "You okay?" "You look cold," Tyler asked. "Cold? Nah, I'm not cold anymore." That sent a chill down my spine. Josh got up real casual-like, said he was going to grab more firewood. "Mind if I stay here with you?" We all froze. No one said a word. A few seconds passed, but it felt way longer. And then he started humming. Some weird, wordless tune made my skin crawl. It wasn't like a song, more like a low moan, like someone hurting but trying to hold it in. Josh tried to play it cool. Yeah, well, we were just about to hit the sack. Gotta be up early tomorrow." The guy stopped humming, slowly turned his head toward Josh. I'm always here, even when you think I'm not. Then, he just turned around and walked straight into the dark. Gone. We sat there for a few minutes, dead quiet. "What the hell was that?" Tyler whispered. "Maybe he's just lost," Josh muttered, but even he didn't sound convinced. We put the fire out and got in the tent way earlier than planned. I was lying in my sleeping bag, wide awake, listening to every damn sound outside. Eventually, I must have passed out. Next morning, we packed up and made our way to the second campsite. On the way, we swung by the ranger station to grab some water and snacks. While Josh and Tyler were inside picking out food, I stepped out for a smoke. A big old bulletin board covered in missing person flyers. Most of them were sun-bleached and curling at the corners, but one stood out. The face on it made my stomach drop. Thomas Gray, 58, missing since last September. May have mental health issues, last seen in this area. It was him, the guy from last night, no doubt in my mind. I called Josh and Tyler out. As soon as they saw the flyer, the color drained from their faces. We called the number on the flyer. Cops said they'd send someone out to check the area. Thanked us for the heads up. They told us to be careful, report back if we saw him again. Josh looked at me. "Should we just head home?" I shook my head. "I mean, yeah, he's got issues, but he didn't seem dangerous." So we kept going. The second campsite was a good 5 miles out, way more remote, pretty much off the grid. We pitched our tent by this small lake. The afternoon went by like any other. We fished a bit, cooked some dinner, played cards, just hanging out. But once the sun went down, the vibe shifted. Around midnight, I jolted awake. That humming sound was back. Same weird tune from the night before, except this time, it was clearer, closer. It echoed all around our tent, like it was circling us. Josh sat up and grabbed my arm. "Did you hear that?" Tyler was awake too. We just laid there listening. The humming would stop, then start up again. "It's him," I whispered. "How the hell does he know where we are?" "Beats me!" I reached for my phone to call the cops. No signal. That creepy hum kept going all night. None of us slept a wink. By morning, we were done. No way we were staying another minute. As we packed up, I noticed something. Footprints, all around our tent. We didn't waste any more time, just grabbed our stuff and hit the trail back to the car. We were about a mile out when we heard it, a loud shout from behind us. "Alex, Josh, Tyler!" It was his voice, clear as day, calling each of us by name. We stopped dead in our tracks, turned around, and there he was. He was waving at us like we were old friends. Huge grin on his face, like he was thrilled to see us. We ran, full sprint, no looking back, until we spotted the car, dove in, and fired up the engine. Josh gunned it down the mountain like a bat out of hell. How the hell did he know our names?" Tyler asked, still catching his breath. No one answered. When we got home, we called the cops again and told them everything. About a week later, they found Thomas, but not alive. They found pieces of him in a deep cave. The medical examiner said he'd been dead for several days. Could have been the weather, could have been animals, or maybe something got to him before all that. We never went camping again after that. Sometimes Josh brings it up, says maybe we were just freaked out, tired, paranoid. Maybe we imagined stuff. But me? That one question still keeps me up at night. How the hell did he know our names?